Russia's invasion of Ukraine began on February 24, 2022, and continues into 2024. The war is marked by devastating Russian airstrikes and fierce Ukrainian counterattacks, supported significantly by international aid, including a $95 billion aid package from the United States. The conflict escalated due to Russia's desire to subjugate Ukraine, which responded with intense defense, particularly after receiving limited military aid in early 2024 due to Republican Party opposition. In April 2024, President Biden signed a military aid package including $61 billion for Ukraine. In northern Ukraine, Russia reopened a front in May 2024, concentrating troops in the Kharkiv region. Although Russian offensives made initial gains, Ukraine managed to stabilize the situation by June 2024. Russia plans a major summer offensive in 2024, potentially one of the bloodiest of the century. The intensification of Russian attacks in specific areas suggests this offensive has already begun. Ukrainian military commentators noted that Russia initially attacked 2 points near Kharkiv, capturing 9 villages in 2 days. The Russian offensive aimed to weaken Ukraine militarily and psychologically. Although the offensive in the Kharkiv Oblast was short-lived, Ukraine re-established stability in the region. Russia now focuses its efforts in the east with a significant increase in attacks, particularly in the Toretsk-Horlivka area, in late June 2024. To carry out the summer offensive, Russia plans to recruit 300,000 new soldiers by the end of June 2024. President Putin stated that, due to the large number of volunteers, there is no need to mobilize troops, mentioning that more than 160,000 people volunteered in 2024. Despite caution in Putin's statements, Russia seems to have enough troops to continue the escalation. So far, more than 538,000 Russian soldiers have died since the invasion began, with heavy losses in May and June 2024. Highlighting the brutality of the conflict, Putin's willingness to sacrifice his troops reflects a lack of regard for Ukrainian lives, including civilians. In May, civilian deaths in Ukraine increased to 174, the highest level in nearly a year, due to airstrikes in populated areas near Kharkiv. Victims included civilians hit in a supermarket and an apartment building. Russia has also attacked civilian infrastructure, such as Ukraine's power grid, causing significant damage and worsening the humanitarian crisis. On June 22nd, the 8th attack on the power grid occurred in 3 months. Although Ukrainian air defense shot down most missiles and drones, the damage was considerable, affecting energy workers and equipment. Since the attacks on energy facilities began, half of Ukraine's electricity generation capacity has been eliminated, leading the country to buy energy from the European Union. The energy crisis and constant attacks make life difficult for Ukrainians, with no end to the war in sight. Experts believe Putin is preparing for a long-term conflict, potentially destabilizing the region and the world. Putin envisions a total war, as evidenced by his actions. In May 2024, he replaced Sergei Shoigu, defense minister for 12 years, with Andrei Belousov, an economist. Belousov's appointment suggests Russia is preparing for a prolonged conflict by focusing on maintaining the war economy and the military-industrial complex despite sanctions and economic challenges. The Institute for the Study of War, an American research group, indicated that these high-level changes after the Russian presidential election point to the mobilization of the Russian economy and defense industrial base for a prolonged war in Ukraine and a possible future confrontation with NATO. Russian officials, such as Vladimir Zharodnitsky, had already warned of the possibility of conflict escalation, including expanding to a large-scale war in Europe. NATO, in turn, is trying to avoid this total war by helping Ukraine win. However, the actions of Western allies also contribute to the conflict's escalation. At the start of the invasion, Western allies hesitated to send weapons to Ukraine, fearing escalation. Artillery and HIMARS missile systems were only sent after months, and modern tanks arrived almost a year later. This pattern of delays continued throughout the war. Ukraine only received weapons after being weakened and was allowed to use Western weapons against Russian targets only after months of destruction caused by Russia. Before May 2024, Ukraine could only use Western weapons within its borders, while Russia freely attacked any part of Ukrainian territory. This allowed Russia to concentrate troops near the border and attack Kharkiv. This attack finally led Western allies to act more decisively. Now, Ukraine can use Western weapons on Russian soil, but only in the Kharkiv Oblast region. The weapons, supplied by countries like the United States, the United Kingdom, and France, are known for their advanced technology. The United States allowed Ukraine to use its weapons to retaliate against Russian forces, but still prohibits the use of Army Tactical Missile Systems, ATCMS, or long-range attacks within Russia. France and the United Kingdom allowed the use of their Scalp EG and Storm Shadow cruise missiles, respectively. Shortly after permission was granted, Ukraine began destroying Russian military targets, complicating Russia's war effort. Some experts believe this could reduce the conflict, but it is likely to provoke a Russian reaction. Russia accused the United States and other NATO countries of escalating the tension, omitting that these measures aim to protect civilians and combat Russian aggression. The Kremlin accuses NATO of prolonging the conflict despite Russia's continued aggressive actions. Ukraine is not a NATO member, so the alliance cannot send troops or establish a no-fly zone. However, French President Emmanuel Macron suggested that France could send troops to defend Ukraine, a sentiment echoed by other European nations. Sending NATO troops could escalate the conflict into a full-scale war in Europe, so the idea was dismissed by NATO officials, including Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, who stated that NATO has no plans to send forces to Ukraine. France is focused on sending instructors to train Ukrainian forces with possible missions in Lviv and Kyiv. Russia considers this action a red line and has warned that instructors in Ukraine would be legitimate targets, increasing the risk of a direct military confrontation between NATO and Russia. The war in Ukraine has spiraled out of control for Russia due to a combination of factors. Ukrainian resistance, bolstered by military and financial support from the United States, the United Kingdom, and the European Union, was much stronger than Russia anticipated. Western economic sanctions have also severely affected the Russian economy, making it difficult to sustain the war in the long term. Strategic mistakes, lack of clear logistics, and heavy losses in soldiers and equipment have weakened Russian forces and troop morale. The global response to the invasion, including sanctions and continuous support for Ukraine, has further isolated Russia. The inspiring leadership of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has kept morale and resistance high among the Ukrainian people. Russia's aggressive actions, such as attacks on civilian infrastructure, provoked a robust response from Western allies, who began to provide more advanced weapons. Changes in Russian military leadership, including the replacement of Sergei Shoigu with Andrei Belousov, indicate internal instability and attempts at strategic adaptation. Internally, the prolonged war has generated public discontent, economic difficulties, and political tensions in Russia. These combined factors have made the war in Ukraine a complex and multifaceted conflict, exceeding Russia's initial expectations and challenging its military and economic capabilities. Activate the notification bell so you don't miss the next video.